to this California Senate race, because the other day, Katie Porter announced that she would be running for Dianne Feinstein's seat. Apparently, Barbara Lee is also in the mix of this as well. And apparently, Ro Khanna is also interested. Now, that could really shake things up for that particular seat. Now, I do want to give you a little bit of information here about Dianne Feinstein. Now, in December, Dianne said she was not going to retire. I don't know if that's the same now. I haven't found a recent statement from her for this month. But if you're wondering why some people may want her to step down, other than her being corporate and corrupt, it has something to do with her health here, her mental health. So this piece here from the LA Times, I want to dive into this particular article here. Let me make sure I'm going to the right part here. Here we go. The article renewed calls for Feinstein's immediate resignation, even though she continues to work on legislation, tend to constituent needs, and as recently as last month appeared lucid and perfectly capable as she was during the Supreme Court confirmation hearings for Ketanji Brown Jackson. The real question is whether I'm still an effective representative for 40 million Californians, and the record shows that I am. Now, that was Feinstein's comment there. But the problem that's happening with her is that it has been reported that she seems to be experiencing some type of mental decline. So there's a cognitive issue that's going on there. She's been having problems with her memory. And that's why some people are calling for her to step down. So it's not just some people having an issue with her age. I want to make that very clear. So it says here, which brings us once more in a roundabout way to Senator Dianne Feinstein in the recent report in the San Francisco Chronicle, raising doubts about the California Democrats' mental well-being and capacity to keep doing her job. So that is why there's this push for her to step down and for someone else to take over. Now, Katie Porter, we're going to talk about her for a bit, because Katie Porter, even though some people still call her progressive per se, she's probably a little bit weaker if you're looking at the definition of a progressive. She's good on some financial issues. I will say that about her. But you have to understand where Katie Porter lives. This is important. She lives in Orange County, California. Orange County is typically a red district there, but she was able to win. Now, recently, she squeaked by. There was this belief that she was going to lose this last time around, but she was able to squeak it by. But the question is that, is Katie Porter going to be able to even pull people in her district to support her for a Senate race? So that's the question some people have. But again, it's not just her. Barbara Lee is also seen to throw her hat in the ring. California Senate race, Representative Barbara Lee challenging Representative Katie Porter as Feinstein future remains unclear. So let's get into this particular piece here. Representative Barbara Lee is planning to run in the upcoming 2024 California Senate contest. Now, that's according to multiple reports, joining fellow progressive Representative Katie Porter on the ballot in what's likely to be a hotly contested race in which longtime incumbent Senator Dianne Feinstein may still seek re-election. Now, I'm hoping she does not. It just is what it is. So Barbara Lee has told members of the Congressional Black Caucus on Wednesday she will run for the seat in 2024. Porter on Tuesday became the first Democrat to say she's running in the race, blasting Republican Senate leaders like Minority Leader Mitch McConnell for what she called rigging our democracy. Feinstein, who's 89 years old, has held the Senate seat since 1992, but questions have emerged over the past few years about her effectiveness and mental competency, claims on which Feinstein has pushed back. Again, Feinstein has refused to resign before the end of her term and has not indicated yet whether she will run for re-election. Here's something you need to watch out for. Representatives Adam Schiff and Ro Khanna, also prominent members of the Progressive Caucus, have suggested they're interested in a Senate run, though Schiff has indicated his bid would be contingent on Feinstein retiring. Schiff decided to step back from House leadership roles in preparation for a possible Senate run. Adam Schiff, by the way, is horrible. He was also a big Russiagator, so just keep that in mind. Let's go on. Lee, 76, has served in the House since 1998, where she has championed progressive causes like Medicare for all, stricter gun control, and raising the minimum wage. Even at one point suggesting California should raise its minimum wage to $26 an hour. Lee is a co-chair of the Policy and Steering Committee, making her the highest ranking Black woman in Democratic leadership. Her Oakland-based 12th district is one of the most heavily Democratic in the country, with a 77-point lean towards Democrat. Porter disappointed some Democrats with her re-election performance, defeating her Republican challenger in the 47th district by slightly more than 3 percentage points. Like I told you, it was close. Meaning her entry into the Senate race could give Republicans an opening in her Orange County district. So that's the thing. If she runs for the Senate race, that gives up her seat, especially if she were to lose. Here's the thing, like, that could give up her seat to a Republican in that district. Again, Orange County is typically a Republican district. So here's something that's quite surprising as well. Under California's jungle primary system, all qualified candidates appear on the first ballot, regardless of the party, with top two advancing to a runoff, meaning it's possible 2 Democrats could face off for the seat in a general election. Now, it'll be interesting to see if Ro Khanna throws his hat in the ring here, because I'm guessing he probably wouldn't, considering Katie Porter has announced, but that's never stopped people before. Now, if Ro Khanna is going to throw his hat in the ring here for this particular race, that brings about another question, because Elizabeth Warren earlier today has endorsed Dianne Feinstein. Elizabeth Warren endorses Porter's bid, has endorsed Katie Porter. I don't know what I was saying there. So Elizabeth Warren endorses Porter's bid to oust 89-year-old Dianne Feinstein. This came out earlier today. So you have Elizabeth Warren endorsing Katie Porter. So if Ro Khanna were to throw his hat in the ring, it would be interesting to see what would happen there in reference to support, because one would assume that Elizabeth Warren would support Ro Khanna. We'll see. We'll see. Now, it goes on to say here, Katie delivers because she's smart and she has a backbone made out of steel. She is exactly who Californians need as their next senator. So that's coming from Elizabeth Warren. So that's that. I mean, she announced that endorsement pretty quick, considering that other people may also run in this race. Now, in reference to Ro Khanna, you know, he's been making a lot of appearances lately. He was recently on Counterpoints, and he was questioned about Force the Vote from Ryan Grimm. Listen to what Ro Khanna says here. Again, he knows exactly what he's doing. I told you guys, I really do believe that Ro Khanna will run for president at some point, maybe 2028, I believe. But listen to what he says here about Force the Vote.
If Democrats take the House back in 2 years, which seems plausible, it'll probably be by a narrow margin. Is there any thinking going on in the Progressive Caucus now to say, what are we going to demand when that comes around?
I don't know why that's funny, but also notice again, he doesn't use the words force the vote. This is something I've been noticing.
Hakeem Jeffries was warned by Kevin McCarthy, right? He said, I had a unanimous vote 2 years ago. Look, I think there are arguments for it, for example, Medicare for all, to get hearings on that, to get a vote on that. But here's the difference, and I believe the fundamental difference with the Freedom Caucus and the Progressive Caucus. The Freedom Caucus, by their own definition, just wants to blow things up and cut things. I mean, that's why they're in Congress. And I disagree with it. I'm not questioning their motives. They're in Congress because they want to reduce spending, cut government. That's an easier thing to be a no on than saying, okay, we want Medicare for all, which is we have to have legislation drafted, and just say it's a harder thing to do when you have an affirmative agenda. So
too hard, not going to try to do it. It's too difficult, So we're not going to go there. That's what's happening.
So the progressives are never going to be blow up government or let's just hurt government. But are there lessons in terms of saying we want more progressives on certain committees, we want certain bills to come up for a vote? Sure. I mean, I think that those are things that progressives should consider.
I think that those are, does he sound like he's congested? He might be. I think that those are things that progressives should consider. Again, Ro Khanna knows exactly what he's doing. He's looking out for his political career too. Notice how he talks out both sides of his mouth there in that clip. Those are things that progressives should do. But, you know, it's easier for the Freedom Caucus because they're just looking to blow things up and they're not looking to produce any type of legislation per se. They're not doing those asks. So he talks out both sides of his mouth. He makes it seem like, yeah, I'm against, you know, what the Freedom Caucus did. But at the same time, you know, could progressives do something like this, asking for things in the future? Yeah, I think we should look at that. This way, he's cool with both sides. He plays in the middle. Now, back to Katie Porter. She did announce, like I said, that she will be running for that seat. Shout out to Case Study QB. Let's take a brief look at this interview that Katie Porter had here with Lawrence O'Donnell. By the way, I want to remind you, Lawrence O'Donnell was the one that told people on national television that if you want the Democratic Party to basically change for you, you have to stop voting for the Democratic Party. If you continue to vote for them, they are never going to change. That came from Lawrence O'Donnell. Let's listen in.
The first time Katie Porter went to work in a House committee hearing in 2019, we saw right away that Katie Porter knew how to use props and knew how to play to the cameras recording the hearing. Katie Porter whiteboard instantly became her trademark in hearings. She joined us on this program after that first hearing and has been a steadily rising star in the House of Representatives since then. On Friday night, even though she had no opportunity to speak on the House floor, Katie Porter knew the power of the prop. As you see in this photograph where she is so plainly reading or pretending to read a book titled The Subtle Art of Not Giving a F. Katie Porter is joining us tonight for an exclusive interview about the big announcement that she made today.
The threat from so-called leaders like Mitch McConnell has too often made the United States Senate the place where rights get revoked, special interests get rewarded, and our democracy gets rigged. Especially in times like these, California needs a warrior in Washington. That's exactly why I'm announcing my candidacy for the United States Senate in 2024. I don't do Congress the way others often do. I use whatever power I have to speak hard truths to the powers that be, to not just challenge the status quo, but call it out, name names, and demand justice.
Joining us now is Democratic Congressman Katie Porter of California, who is now a candidate for United States Senate. Congresswoman Porter, the first question has to be what America's been wondering since Friday night. Were you really reading that book or just pretending to read that book for the photograph?
I was absolutely reading that book. It was actually my fourth book of the week. I had read a book basically every day during those interminable alphabetical votes in which the Republicans struggled to find leadership. And so that book I picked up at a little free library on my walk from my basement studio here in Washington to the Capitol building.
Okay, so you really were reading it. So Senator Dianne Feinstein, that's the seat you'd be running for. She is 89 years old. She would be 91 years old during the re-election campaign if she joins the re-election campaign. 92 years old when elected. That would take her term up to 98, 6-year term. She issued a statement today in reaction to your announcement saying, everyone is, of course, welcome to throw their hat in the ring, and I will make an announcement concerning my plans for 2024 at the appropriate time. Right now, I'm focused on ensuring California has all the resources it needs to cope with the devastating storms slamming the state and leaving more than a dozen dead.
At this point in time, she's 89 years old. The question that I have is like, why would you even want to stay in at that point? Listen, let me tell you something. At 89 years old, I would just retire. I would have no problem retiring. Actually, I would retire before 89 years old. But I'm just saying, like, why would you still want to stay there and work? Why? Go live the rest of your life in peace.
What is your reaction to that statement by Senator Feinstein?
Well, I would echo what Senator Feinstein said. I think she's exactly right. This should be a race in which there are different people stepping up and Californians get to decide who represents them in the U.S. Senate. Dianne Feinstein is a trailblazer, and the path that she has created for women in politics is one that I was able to follow right to the House of Representatives, and she has accomplished a lot, and I look forward to following in her footsteps to represent California in the U.S. Senate. I also want to echo what Senator Feinstein said about the terrible storms that are ravaging California right now. But those storms really illustrate what's at stake. We cannot continue to have a Washington that ignores the threats of climate change, that is willing to cozy up to special interests like big oil rather than stand up to them. So my kids are in California. I hope they're staying safe and dry. And my thoughts are with the first responders and all of the people who are suffering and having to bunker down and be safe. But this is what's at stake in this race. Are we going to have a Senate that stands up to problems like climate change, that understands that our future is under attack?
You are already being criticized by some Democrats in California Democrats who could be rivals to you in this campaign for announcing in the middle of this storm, saying that that's an inappropriate time when California is being battered this way to announce a campaign like this.
Really? So let me get this straight. There's a certain time that you have to announce when you're going to run for. I don't know about that one. Name names, Lawrence. You said certain people in this race. Who said it? Was it Barbara? Say it, Lawrence.
Well, as I just said, those storms, which are going to keep coming in the next few days, in the next few months, in the next years, are a result of us ignoring problems for too long in Washington, decade after decade, of not being willing to fight for our environment, of not being willing to understand that climate change is real. So I think it's important that we understand the storms illustrate that we do not live in typical times. In my 3 terms in the House, I was sworn in the first time in the longest shutdown in government history, the second time during an insurrection, and the third time 15 votes to try to find a leader of the House. Washington's broken, and we're seeing the effects in California right now of that broken system. So while my heart goes out to everyone in California, and I am watching and supporting our local officials, our transit workers, our first responders, everybody who's helping right now, we need to send people to Washington who are going to solve problems like this. That's the best thing we can do to ensure California and the country are safe going forward.
Yeah.
I hate to say it, Katie. Actually, I don't hate to say it, but I hate to be the bearer of bad news here. But if you in Washington and the rest of your comrades continue to vote for the military-industrial complex, continue to support war actions abroad, continue to support drone strikes, you are not in any way, shape, or form getting closer towards curbing the climate crisis. The military-industrial complex is the largest single most polluter in the world. So until I see you guys become anti-war, stop dropping bombs, you're not serious either. You see, this is the piece a lot of them seem to leave out. They want to bring up recycling. They want to bring up electric vehicles. That's Pete Buttigieg's mark right there, by the way. Just get an electric vehicle. That'll solve the climate crisis. Pete says this as though everyone can afford to just buy a car. Things like that. You know, that's like PMC brain. You know, that's PMC brain. But none of them are serious. None of them. If they are still voting for war legislation If they are still voting to increase that defense budget, which is now over $800 billion, freaking ridiculous. That is more than it was when we were at war with Iraq. It has continued to increase since 2011. We are not at war. This is all for these weapon manufacturers. This is for companies like Lockheed Martin, for companies like Raytheon, Northrop Grumman. It's for those types of companies, and they profit off of it. War is a profit. So when there is money to be made, they don't care about whether or not this hurts the climate and the environment. They're just trying to make money. So if you're still voting for those things, then you are not serious about climate change either. That's the funny part about this conversation.
You know, it's very common for sitting senators who are choosing not to run in the next election cycle to announce immediately after the election that we just had. I know the senator I worked for, New York Senator Daniel Patrick Moynihan, he announced that he would not run for re-election on November 7th of 1998, meaning he wouldn't run in 2000. He announced it the full 2 years ahead of time, immediately after the previous election, and so that any candidates thinking of running for it could use the full time they need in an extremely expensive state like that to mount a campaign. The campaign was eventually mounted by Hillary Clinton, who won that seat. What do you say to voters, though, who don't think about the challenges of running in the biggest state in the union with the most television markets of any state in the union, the most expensive place to run anywhere in America? What do you say to voters who are exhausted by the politics of the last election, that here you are, as far as in their sense of it, immediately announcing the campaign for another election?
I think Californians and Americans understand that Washington isn't delivering for them. And they see that the election after election, that doesn't change. Corporations continue to get their way in Washington while families get left behind. And what they want to see is leaders step up and run to represent them, to put their interests first, not to cave to special interests. And so I will tell you, in talking to voters across Orange County in my own very competitive races, they want more from Washington, not less. They want more people to listen to them, to engage with them, to visit their communities, to hear their problems. So announcing early gives me the time to do the work of understanding California and being ready to fight for it when I'm sworn into the Senate.
Quickly.
She said when she's sworn in, so she's already saying she's going to win. This is interesting.
Before we go, let me ask you a current House business question that I just asked Congressman Goldman. Would you be willing and volunteer to serve as one of the Democrats on this new select investigative committee that the Republicans are creating?
Well, I'm always willing to step up and serve when asked, but I will tell you I'm very, very excited about the work that we're going to have to do on the Oversight Committee. That will be a full-time assignment, I think, as well. I'm going to continue my work on the House Natural Resources Committee, but of course, I am always willing to step up and help my colleagues, help Democrats, help Americans get the government that they deserve.
Congresswoman Katie Porter, hoping to become Senator Katie Porter. Thank you very much for joining us tonight.
So there are some problems with Katie Porter, which wasn't mentioned in that interview clip, which if I were interviewing Katie Porter, I would have definitely asked her about these allegations that she has in the workplace. Some people don't want to talk about it. This came out at the end of December. I'm going to talk about it. People need to, well, she needs to start answering these questions. Representative Katie Porter used racist language, ridiculed people for reporting sexual harassment, ex-staffer claims. An ex-staffer for Democrat Representative Katie Porter of California alleged that the Congresswoman made rude and racist comments to staff and said that she ridiculed people for reporting sexual harassment. I can't make this up. I can't. Sasha, a Navy veteran and former wounded warrior fellow for Porter, also alleged that she heard the progressive Congresswoman using racial slurs when talking to staff. Porter is currently facing scrutiny after leaked text messages showed her berating Sasha for catching the Rona. We're going to call it the Rona. I got to be careful here. For catching it. Sasha also said that Porter ridiculed people after they had reported sexual harassment in her office, as well as made fun of individuals whose parents passed away from it. Lawrence O'Donnell did not ask her about this. This is recent, by the way. It's not like this is something that happened a couple years ago. This was December. Basically told the individual to grow up. Sasha noted that the staffer who worked with her during her 2-year period in Porter's office left the office shortly after sexual harassment conversation with the Congresswoman. She also noted the individual hasn't filed anything with the ethics committee, but spoke about it with Porter personally, and that was her response. The Navy veteran called a Facebook Live event around the time of Porter's infection in July, which Sasha previously told Fox News Digital excommunicated her from the office for violating, where the office communications director had set up the ring light and iPad, and then Katie came in and completely dressed her down in front of me. This is a longer article here. This just, I'm sorry, but Porter's office did not respond. Here's another thing. Porter's office did not respond. Sorry, I lost that thing. Porter's office did not respond to Fox News Digital request for a comment. A Twitter account, make this smaller. A Twitter account called Dear White Staffers posted screenshots of conversations with anonymous ex-Porter staffers where the allegations of her saying rude, racist things while trying to mask it as edgy humor and bad-mouthing Democrat leadership. Whew, thinks she knows better and talks about other members, leadership, staffers, local elected officials, etc., at full volume in public and to literally anyone who will listen. The anonymous account also accused Porter of being completely disinterested in representing her district in Congress, adding that the only staffers who appear to survive are super fans that participate in and overlook the abuse. Guys, this is huge. The only staffers that appear are the ones who are super fans that participate in or overlook the abuse. Okay. The claims come as Porter is hit by an avalanche of accusations following the Dear White Staffers account initial post regarding Sasha's excommunication from the Congresswoman's office for violating office protocols by catching the Rona. Porter has a history of controversial text messages that have surfaced, such as her berating of Irvine, California Mayor Farrah Khan after the Congresswoman trashed the Irvine Police Department following her violent town hall last year. In the text, Porter criticized Khan, saying that she would not call the mayor after the arrest of Julian Willis after he allegedly punched a pro-Trump protester, giving the protester a bloody nose. You can lecture me on professionalism and see what happens, Porter wrote in the text. So, what's really going on with Katie Porter? And Lawrence O'Donnell didn't ask her about this at all in the interview. Again, that's recent. This is a recent story. Very interesting. Very interesting.